Many people have been suggesting many topics, and I love it. Because if many people are suggesting many topics, it means many people are listening to you. Many people are finding what you have to say useful to them. And it motivates you to share more. It's one of those beautiful cycles where the feedback mechanisms come into play, a positive feedback. But today I wanted to talk about a feedback mechanism that goes wrong, and that is the process of addiction. Addiction is a worldwide pandemic. We are addicted to substances. It could be the narcotics, it could be the alcohol, it could be, in the last 1 year, video gaming for the young people. It could be sexual addiction for so many. And often I have been asked, what is the role of yoga in addiction and de-addiction? At the site of Sri Balaji Vidyapith, we have done some work, preliminary work in this, in alcohol addiction and de-addiction. And one of our MPhil candidates, Kian Gupta, had done some work on it as part of his MPhil thesis. And Dr. Balaji, who did his MPhil and then now his PhD with us, he has, through his work at the Mother Care Foundation, where they do a lot of de-addiction work here in Kottakuppam, he has been doing a lot of work because he is involved right at grassroots level with a residential program on de-addiction and brought in the yoga element. So we have been right at the grassroots level dealing with this. And at ICYER, we have so many people who are referred from the psychiatry department. The psychiatry department has collaborated extensively with ICYER, and they send so many of the patients who have so many different addictions. Let us try to understand addiction from the modern scientific as well as the yogic perspective. It is all based on basically a reward, a pleasure reward part of the brain. This part of the brain is in the central part of the brain. This area of the brain, we would call it the mammalian complex. So you remember, we have the reptilian complex, which is the spinal cord and the brain stem that keeps you alive, the survival instinct. The mammalian complex is more to do with emotions, the feelings and the emotionalities. And then you have, of course, the human complex, which is the cortex, and especially the prefrontal cortex. So in that mammalian complex area, which is the inner aspect of the brain, you have what are called basal ganglia. The basal ganglia are very important normally for movement. And this is why in this area, when basal ganglia are not working properly, you end up with conditions like Parkinson's and other type of movement and tremor-based disorders, neurological disorders. The basal ganglia. Basal, they are the base of the brain. Ganglia, group of nerves. The head of the nerve, when it comes together, it's called a ganglia. So ganglion, ganglia. Ganglion is single, ganglia is plural. And you have these head of the nerves, nerve cell, the head. When they are kept together, it's called a ganglia. So basal ganglia. And in that, a nucleus, you find all these different terms and they call it nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens, it is basically our reward center in the brain. It is the pleasure center. So see where pleasure is, the mammalian brain. Not the reptilian brain, not the human brain. The mammalian brain. So in this mammalian brain, basal ganglia, you have the nucleus accumbens, which is the pleasure and reward center. This is the center when you stimulate, you feel a sense of pleasure, you have been rewarded. And then what does that make you do? You want to have that experience again. Okay, so pleasure then wants you to have more pleasure. So this is actually where a very important part of this cycle resides. The basal ganglia, nucleus accumbens. And also an area in the basal ganglia called the dorsal striatum. Stria means a line. Dorsal means in the back. These are terms that, the more you understand them, the better. So dorsa is the back. Ventral is the front. Dorsum is the back. So they are towards the back. And striata, they are linear, like a line. So the dorsal striata and the nucleus accumbens, these are the most important parts in the basal ganglia that drive this sense of motivation, reward, pleasure. So this is one part. The second part is basically your limbic system. Now the basal ganglia and the limbic system are very close together. You remember the limbic system? Yeah, it is the emotionality. So the emotionality that comes out of everything is the limbic system. And it keeps on going in circle. Limbus means a circle. So limbic system is a circular pattern. And in the limbic system, the area that we are concerned here today is the amygdala. And the amygdala and what is called the extended amygdala. This is an extended portion of the amygdala and its surrounding area. The cingulate gyrus, the amygdala, and also you have behind it the hippocampus. The hippocampus is where the memory is stored. What is the amygdala? It is that area that is related to strong emotionality, powerful emotionality. When we talk about rage, it is the amygdala. So the basal ganglia, you have the reward center, the pleasure center. Amygdala is where you have the rage center. And then you have the prefrontal cortex, which is where the power of choice lies, but also the power of thinking about something. So what happens is these three parts of the brain, when we were studying the bindus, Swamiji often put the bindus into triangles. So, each of the bindus would be connected to another as a triangle. So there would be, for example, Bhumadhya Bindu would be connected and Bindu Nadi would be connected, and then inside you would have the Agnya Bindu connected and one triangle made. So triangle, another triangle, then Mahatrikona. Similarly, three important areas that are forming a triangle. The basal ganglia, the limbic system, the extended amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex. So what happens is that there is this pleasure. Now normally when do you get a reward? When do you get a pleasure? When you have worked hard for it. So you have worked for something. After all your effort, mehnat, uraipu, you have worked hard. And then you get the reward. And you are very happy about it. Now what happens is addictive substances and addictive behaviors, what they have a tendency to do is give you an instant reward without having to work for it. They shortcut this system. So instead of working and getting the reward and the pleasure, you are getting the reward and the pleasure without having to put in the effort. Now you see why addiction can be so powerful. Because what has happened is that this whole circuit, it's driven, yes, Ivan, by dopamine. Remember, dopamine is associated with Parkinson's, basal ganglia. Okay, you start to make these associations. Dopamine, less dopamine, Parkinson's. Okay, Dopamine is a very important part of this. Noradrenaline is another part. Glutamic acid is another neurotransmitter. And GABA aminobutyric acid, GABA, GABA. All of these are part and parcel of the neurotransmitters that are doing this job. So what is happening is that when you have made an effort, you have this whole response which is based on reward, pleasure. But here you have given a substance, be it nicotine, be it alcohol or marijuana or cocaine or whatever it be. Suddenly what has happened is you have short-circuited this. You can get pleasure without the effort, says the devil inside. You know, when Snoopy in Tintin comics, you know, he, whether to take that bone or keep the, stuff that his master has found in the mouth. And you have the saint Snoopy and you have the devil Snoopy. We all have that. We have the saint Ananda, devil Ananda. The saint Ananda says, Ananda, you should work. You should work this. And then the devil says, well, take the easy way. Just take that substance, you get that high. The dopamine high. The noradrenaline high. Now, when you look at this whole area, what you start to realize is we are dealing with primarily the mammalian part of our nervous system, the mammalian complex. And we as a human being have evolved beyond the mammal. We are still a mammal. Mammary glands, womb, delivering, lactation, we are still a mammal. But we have taken a step further by the use of the cortical capabilities. The cortical capabilities which make us human actually go beyond the mammalian instincts and the emotionalities. But what happens in addiction is that this gets short-circuited and you take a substance, you get a high, you feel good. Now you don't have the substance, you feel a low. This is where the amygdala comes in and you get angry about it, you get agitated about it and you go into all that withdrawal. So then the prefrontal cortex, which should be guiding you, says, well, last time you took that substance, it gave you a high, take some more. You see, the same thing that is giving us the power of choice, the power of choice is now making a choice to take the easy way out. Kathopanishad, the Katha Upanishad, one of the very important yoga Upanishads. The Kathopanishad tells us, Yama Raja, Dharma Raja Yama, the god of death, he tells Nachiketa, there are two paths, Shreya Marga, Preya Marga. Shreya Marga is the noble path, the path of nobility. Shreyas, Shreya Marga. Preya Marga is the pleasurable path, the easy way out. Now here what is happening? The power of choice. Remember the Deva and the Asura within. What is happening is that the power of choice, instead of saying, I need to make the effort to get that reward and pleasure, the Preya Marga choice is saying, take a substance, get that same pleasure. Why waste your time in effort? Same this part. And this is why adolescents are at the highest risk of addiction, because in adolescence, this part of the brain is not yet developed fully. It is said that it's only around 2021 that this actually gets fully developed. I don't know whether it is fully developed in many of us. You wonder whether we continue to be adolescents for the whole life, the way we behave. So what is happening is the adolescent is having a strong basal ganglia, been around a long time. A strong limbic system, amygdala, been around a long time. And a weak prefrontal cortex that has not been around too much, not yet developed. And so the power of choice, instead of doing the right thing, we do that which gives us instant gratification. Instant gratification becomes the mantra for the undeveloped prefrontal cortex. And so the prefrontal cortex says, get some more of that substance. When will I get that substance? Anticipation starts to come in. And it starts to push you into behavior where that substance which gave you instant gratification can be obtained. And so you start to create a cycle. Now all of this, I would say about 60% is governed by your genetics and about 40% by your environment. I would say it's 60-40. So there is a genetic tendency, no doubt about it. And then the environment, especially stress. Why have so many young people got addicted during the pandemic to different substances or to video gaming? Well, simple: stress. Because the same pathway is used in the stress response. So the stress response is using the same pathway that is also used by the addiction cycle. Again, this limbic system, amygdala, it is very much part of your stress response. Right next to it, the hypothalamus, which gets involved into the stress response. Again, the power of choice here, whether to let something stress you or not, a developed or undeveloped prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the seat of two important qualities in yoga: Viveka and Vairagya. Viveka is discernment. Vairagya is metacognitive ability to take a step back. So what is happening is that this power here can overcome it, but it is undeveloped. Hence, when we are looking at this whole cycle, we see that the basal ganglia, especially the reward center, the amygdala, which is where the hyper-emotionality is there, and the undeveloped prefrontal cortex, where the choice is being used to choose the Preya Marga, the pleasurable path, rather than the Shreya Marga, the noble path. All of this is coming together, and what is here? It is again related to the buddhi, the higher intellect, related to the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And this Vijnanamaya Kosha, the buddhi, is where the power of will comes in. Ichcha Shakti, the power of will, the power of knowing, Jnana Shakti. What is the right choice? And then the power of doing, Kriya Shakti. Ichcha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, again prefrontal cortex when it is developed. Undeveloped prefrontal cortex, undeveloped buddhi, undeveloped higher intellectual discerning faculty will make us choose the easier way out. So when we want to break this, we need to address the root cause. And this is where we have to get right down into the limbic system. We have to get right down into the mammalian brain. How do you do that? The mammalian brain wants to play. And this is where for young people, these adolescents where the prefrontal cortex has not yet been developed, help them work positively through the mammalian complex. Get down on all fours. Chatushpadasana. Crawl around making sounds like a cat. Meow, meow. A dog. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Huh? A tiger. Ah. A lion. Ah. All of that. What you are doing is you are creating a very beautiful positive relationship with the mammalian part of the brain, the basal ganglia and the limbic system. Start to do different asanas that are related to animals. The Ushtrasana, the camel posture. The Matsyasana, the fish. The Garudasana, the eagle. All these different asanas that are related to the animal kingdom. Animalia. kingdom Animalia. Start to work with them. What you are doing is you are creating a healthy relationship with that primitive part of you, which is that mammalian part. You are getting to have a sense of ease with it. You are giving an outlet for that amygdala-based hyper-emotionality. And in doing these practices, when you do it playfully, oxytocin comes in. Oxytocin is again that play. Dopamine starts to come in. So what happens is, instead of having to take an external substance for dopamine, oxytocin, noradrenaline and GABA, these practices start to give an intrinsic reward, an intrinsic pleasure that comes from within. What you are starting to do is you are giving them the option that through this you are creating the ability to satisfy something that needs to be satisfied, but in a healthy manner, in a step-by-step manner. These type of practices, working on the floor, working through the asanas that are related to the Animalia, kingdom Animalia, the different mudras that are related to it. You can do all of that. The Mandukasana, jump like a frog, then sit down quietly and meditate like a frog. Rishi Manduka, you become. Become that best of the mammals. You start to have this. Again, doing this type of work in a group creates a very nice bonding. What is bonding? Oxytocin. So again, that feel good is coming in. The endorphins, enkephalins are coming in when you start to play. When we play with the young people in class, so much of fun, so much of laughter is brought out. Hasya yoga. This is where the sound-based practices, the hakara, making sound of ha, 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 ha. You are starting to give an expression, an outlet for expression. Using the nada pranayamas, the brahmari, the B sound, the pranava, the kukriya. What are you doing with all of this? The Garudabaha, the donkey one. What you are doing? You are connecting in a very healthy way to these parts with which you have lost connect, and hence they are craving attention. You start to deal with this. The next part you have to deal with is the prefrontal cortex. How do you strengthen the prefrontal cortex? How do you strengthen the power of choice? How do you strengthen viveka vairagya? The key here is pranayama. Because pranayama is one of the best ways to shift from automatic behavior to conscious behavior. Addiction is to be enslaved in unconscious, automated behavior. You want to come out of it. You want to step out of it. You want to make that big step. So what you are doing is you are stepping up. How do you step up? By shifting the way you breathe. Instead of breathing automatically, you start to choose how you are going to breathe. And this is where basic pranayamas, the Sukha Purvaka, the Savitri, they are very useful. Alternate nostril breathing is excellent. Especially what it is doing, it is that it is working on this. Because suddenly what you have done is you have shifted the way you are breathing. You are saying, I am not going to let my brainstem tell me how to breathe. I will tell my brainstem how to breathe. You are strengthening, you are exercising the power of choice. And this is why pranayama mediated prefrontal cortex, it is transcending the limbic system. Yes, Ivan, it is transcending the limbic needs. Because instead of getting caught there, you have taken a step up. You have stepped out of the swamp. You have stepped out of the junkyard. You have stepped out of this circular addictive cycle. Which is, again, remember, all of this I told you is part of that limbic activity. Now, the limbic activity and the hippocampus that says, I remember that. The amygdala says, I want it. If I don't get it, I'll get angry. And then the prefrontal cortex, which was not developed, says, okay, get it this way. Now, what are you saying? Let's go above it. Let's breathe and change the way. The moment you move into the cortical part and you strengthen it, the limbic system doesn't control your life anymore. Emotions are controlling our life. We are slaves to our emotions. We need to be masters of the emotions. That is where the concept of shifting, and how do you shift your consciousness from automatic living to conscious mindful living? Pranayama is the key. And then you want to attenuate this limbic overactivity. Attenuation of limbic overactivity, what is the best way? Japa. Mantra japa. Om, 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 Om. Immediately what is happening? You are starting to bring the limbic system down. The whole limbic system starts to come down. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. The use of the japa. Ram, 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 Ram. Automatically, what is happening? That japa is attenuating, it is tranquilizing all those craving that was going on there. I want that pleasure. If I don't get it, get mad. I want that, do it. What you are doing is you are shifting. How do you connect? How do you connect? You are connecting by consciousness. You are connecting by a conscious choice. And this is why the use of the pranayama as a tool to strengthen the choice to be human. And then you can start to go into contemplative practices, concentrative, contemplative practices. Don't start off with them. Let that mammalian part be satisfied by the activity. This is why the jati is the shake and throw. Doing these different practices to work on that mammalian complex. You then start to develop strength and courage, the virya, through practices which are like virasana. The virasana is a very beautiful practice. The virasana enables you to develop courage. The virasana enables you to develop that capacity to face that which needs to be faced and strengthen your power to go on with it. We can think about this as a Kriya Yoga also. Tapa is all this effort you are making. Swadhyaya is all the work you are doing on the prefrontal cortex to strengthen the capacity of choice. But then one of the most important aspects in all of this is Ishvara Pranidhana. The power to give over to something greater. The power to give over the individual will to something greater. And this is where the power of prayer comes in. Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is Ishvara Pranidhana. They are one and the same. Bhakti Yoga is a concept of the Bhagavad Gita. Ishvara Pranidhana, the concept of Yoga Sutra. The capacity to give over to something bigger, something greater. Because when you give over, what you have done is that you have diluted your stress. Because as long as you think my problem, my problem, my problem, you are killing yourself. When you shift from the my to we and you give over, you say it's not in my hands anymore. Oh divine, it is in your hands. What you have done is you have shifted, and in that shift, you have expanded your consciousness and you have diluted the problem. You have diluted the poison, and the dilute poison actually becomes your medicine. So the very thing which was your problem becomes your medicine when you give over to something higher. This is where the power of devotion, the power of giving over, the power of prayer, thy will be done. I have done my best, leave the rest. That is that moment where you have suddenly made that big jump, and suddenly you connect to something. And the Bhakti Yoga, what a beautiful connection with the heart, the Anahata theory. And through the heart you are connecting to from the Ahata, the manifest vibration, to the Anahata, the unmanifest vibration. Giving over. What a beautiful concept. Because in that moment of giving over, you realize you are not the doer. And that the concept of the Bhagavad Gita, going beyond pleasure and pain, going beyond the opposites, Dvandva Tita, that is the capacity. You are growing into something greater. People use the word surrender and people think it's negative. Here what you are doing, you are giving over to something higher. You are allowing yourself, the drop, to merge into the ocean. There is this beautiful moment of connection. And in that moment of connection, you are one with the universe. And suddenly in that moment, the highest reward, the highest dopamine, the highest norepinephrine, GABA, glutamic acid. Because you are one. The highest oxytocin, you are one. There's no duality. That capacity to give over and to have trust, Shraddha. So important to have community for this. A supportive community is very, very important. Because one of the major issues with addiction is peer pressure. And that is why creating a positive peer pressure. When we work with the young people, we try to create a positive peer pressure of a group of young people who are trying to work on the noble path rather than the shortcut path of pleasure. Automatically you support people. This is where the importance of Sangha comes in, supporting each other. Because when we support each other, we are strong. We become stronger by supporting each other. In supporting each other, we become stronger. Again, it's a type of Bhakti Yoga. It is a type of Ishvara Pranidhana. And yes, even the crows, they are supporting each other here. One crow gets something and calls all the crows. And Kaka Bhushandi, the wise crow, is saying, yes, Ananda, you are on the path, keep going. Find that support system. Be that support system for others. Can you be the support system for others? Yes, I'm asking you. Can you be the person you want to have in your life? Can you be the person who you would wish to support you when you are down? Can you be that? A caring, listening ear and a caring heart. What a important aspect of supporting each other on the positive path. You are utilizing the same pathways. Like when I talk about the stress response, I say the same thing. The same nervous system, endocrine system, immune system that works in stress and creates the problem, the same three pathway, again three triangle, is reversed through yoga to create health and wellness. You are still using the basal ganglia. You are still using that reward center, nucleus accumbens and the dorsal tract striata. Dorsal striata. You are still using the amygdala. You are still using the hippocampus, the cingulate gyrus. You are still using the prefrontal cortex. But what you have done now, you have created a positive spiral. There is a positive spiral. And yes, even one of the most important practices from this tradition, one of the most important practices is the pranava. Because the pranava, the A, the U, the it connects all aspects of us. The stula sukshma karana, the gross embodiment, the subtle embodiment and the causal embodiment are connected together. And all the pieces that have fallen apart because of chronic drug abuse, you are starting to put the pieces together and rebuild yourself so you can rise from the ashes like the phoenix. The pranava pranayama is the cornerstone of this. I remember when Kian was working with the Mother Care Foundation, which is the residential de-addiction center. He used to go in the morning and sing bhajans with these people. I think that is one of the best things Kian did, was singing the bhajans with all of these people who were there for de-addiction. And they used to enjoy it. It's not about the meaning of the bhajan, whether you were singing to Krishna or to Rama or in Sanskrit or Hindi or Tamil. It was just the capacity of singing and coming together. And when I saw the videos of how these men whose lives had been destroyed by abuse, how their lives were coming together, how they were starting to get a hold on themselves, it was so beautiful. Never underestimate the power of bhajana. Never underestimate the power of prarthana, prayer. Never underestimate the power of mantra japa. These are the very important tools we use in this. The Bhagavad Gita gives us the pathway also when it says, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa. We start thinking of these objects. You start to think about it. Remember the undeveloped prefrontal cortex? Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa Sangasteshu. You get attached to it. Sanga Samjayate Kama, comes great desire. Kamat Krodho, because you are not getting it, the amygdala, extended amygdala, rage comes in. Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha. Now you go into confused state. Sammohat Smriti Vibhrama. The memory is lost. What is right, what is wrong? The memory of the past experiences. Last time I did this, I suffered these consequences. You forget all of that. Smriti Brahmshat Buddhi Nasho. The buddhi, the capacity of higher thinking is lost. Buddhi Nashat Pranaschati. And from that loss of reasoning, we destroy ourselves. This is the stress cycle, this is the addiction cycle. And that is why Krishna says us, Raga Dvesha Viyuktaistu. We have to transcend the Raga and the Dvesha, the likes and the dislikes, pain and pleasure. How do you transcend it? Start using this prefrontal cortex. Raga Dvesha Viyuktaistu Vishayan Indriyascharan. That you are able to withdraw your senses from the sensory objects, Pratyahara. And one of the best practices, Prana Kriya. Whereas you breathe in, you take the energy forward, and as you breathe out, the energy comes in. You feel the prana moving forward on the inhalation and coming back in on the exhalation. Outwards on the inhalation, inwards on the exhalation. Or you say, this in and out, people get confused with prana kriya. So what we can say is, breathe in and go forward, breathe out and come back. Breathe in, go forward, breathe out, come back. And at this area, again, you are strengthening the Ajna. The Ajna Chakra, the Ajna Bindu, which is where the seat of the power of choice lies. The power of choice, which is our superpower. And at that point, that pratyahara, where you are withdrawing yourself from the senses, you are disentangling yourself from the senses. You are moving from being caught in the senses, Indriya Jala. Indriya Jala is a web of the senses. We are caught in it, Indriya Jala. and you are moving up into Indriya Jaya. You are becoming victorious over the senses. Maharishi Patanjali uses the term Indriya Jaya. Saucha is one of the very important ones where that happens. Sau manasya ekagraya Indriya Jaya. Atma Darshana Yogyatwanicha. Through Saucha, through purity, you can attain that. The niyama of Saucha is brought in there. You are moving from Indriya Jala, where you are caught in the senses. You are a slave of the senses. You are moving to become the master of the senses, Indriya Jaya. These are some of the thoughts I wanted to share today. When we are talking about addiction, it becomes a vicious spiral. Let us replace that vicious spiral by a positive one. Pratipaksha Bhavanam, taking the opposite twist to it. Remember I said nervous system, endocrine system, immune system, they go in one way, and you have stress, they go in the reverse way, and yoga creates health. Here let us turn the same pathway, using the same prefrontal cortex. The undeveloped prefrontal cortex, you want to develop it. The unused power of choice, you want to use it. Or the misused power of choice, you want to use it as it is meant to be used. Swamiji often said, yoga is the science of right useness. Right useness. Using everything you have as it is meant to be used. Righteousness. That is how we work on this. We use the same tools, but we have gone on the reverse pathway and we have changed. And from addictive pattern, you have gone into a de-addictive, transformative pattern. Moving from being in the swamp to moving above it, transcending it. What a beautiful opportunity we have with yoga. Now, there are people who do need other therapies. I'm not saying yoga is the answer to it all. But definitely we have found in our own work that yoga as an adjuvant, as an additive, not addictive, additive as an adding to it. Adjunct additive therapy. Along with other therapies. You may be using, the medical management that is done in psychiatry, counseling, psychotherapy. You can do all of that along with that. And many of our students have found that the 12-point program of Alcoholics Anonymous, they have found that to be very similar to the yoga pathway also, and drawn parallel to it. One of our students in the UK has written extensively on her own addiction and coming out of it through yoga. So proud of her. Another of our students in the USA, he has come out of it, written about it, and now he and his wife are creating amazing ripples in the field of yoga with their wonderful work, showing how this can all work together. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be this and that. And this is why yoga gives us the greater picture. It gives us the philosophy, the psychology, and the spirituality to enhance our journey from being in the swamp of addiction to transcending it and flying up into the sky where we truly belong. May we all be the best version of ourselves that we can be, and may we support others on this journey. The past year has been an amazing year as far as our online sessions go. Last year in March, I think it was the 22nd of March, we had the first Janta curfew where the Prime Minister requested everyone to stay home. And then a few days later, the national lockdown was announced. And I started these sessions. And it's been wonderful. I've met so many people, all of you, so many of you who have come into my life. And many of you who were already in my life have become stronger. Those who were not have come together. We have created a beautiful yoga parivar, a yoga family worldwide. And so many online sessions have been going on. Currently, I am starting from April 8th, a new round of the Yoga Sutra, Ashtangam, 8 sessions looking at the Yoga Sutra of Maharishi Patanjali. And this time it will be on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5 to 7 in the evenings, Indian time. And you're all welcome to join me. Because of the pandemic and understanding the struggle so many are having, I've decided to offer this as a Dakshina based course. So you can join it, you can offer what you want. And in case you don't have anything to offer, you can do it free also. Because I know the struggle everybody is having at this time. And I would never want money to keep any sincere student away from these teachings. So do look at the Facebook page, do send me an email at ananda@icyer.com. Register for the course and support each other the best we can support each other. Hari Om Tat Sat, Dhanyavadaha, Nandri Vanakkam, Grazie.